So I'm hearing some good examples from people about grassroots, bottom-up type approaches to developing strategic litigation.
There's another thing that really came out in the panel, but come out of the conference, is really how can you ensure that the participation of affected individuals and communities, people who are affected by human rights abuses, by discrimination, that they form a central part of any movement, of any conversation around strategic litigation.
The ability to work on a day-to-day basis with the activist, so lawyers fully understanding what the dynamics are on the ground, what are the issues that face activists, and how the litigation strategy is ultimately going to influence those dynamics.
My absolute main point would really be that people talk to each other, to learn and share experiences.
I don't think anyone should be taking or even considering strategic litigation without discussions with disabled people's organisations, without discussions with a wide diversity of the movement.
Your legitimacy comes from the community you serve.
All of the advocacy skills that I've learned and honed did nothing to enable me to be able to convince the district attorney in that case not to seek an execution date. It was only the influence and power of people in the community in which we were advocating that were able to get us over that hurdle.
It takes a very collaborative effort, both within the organization and the litigation team, and with those that you're going to work with to try and advance the case.
I think one of the best ways to marry strategic litigation and social movements from the disability rights perspective is really to think about the root problem, which is why are these elite lawyers, well-meaning human rights lawyers, who don't belong to these marginalised communities taking these cases? And where would the disabled lawyers be, and where would they take these kinds of cases instead?
I think it's understanding whether or not the objectives really resonate with issues on the ground, whether it's rooted in communities and has the ability to be implemented and have a real impact on those communities.
I think the way you deal with that tension in between the legal community and the advocates and the organizers is by having really strong relationships and trusting each other.
For both lawyers and activists to manage expectations of each other. How much can social movements achieve and how much can the lawyers actually achieve?
I think it's a real empowering experience to see a court of law rule in their favor and say, yes, what the government is doing is wrong and that has to be changed. And then they are empowered to go out in the streets and change it. I think the key to balancing sort of litigation experience and community experience is first for the lawyers, humility, right? And recognizing that your experience may not be the best experience for a given moment. But we also have to make sure that the activists are part of that decision making in that legal process, in the legal case, so that they have a better understanding of why this is really important. So I think you have to really, be conscious of who you're talking to and who the best person to be delivering the message at any given time is. And sometimes it's the lawyers and sometimes it's not. And a lot of times it's not. For the moment when the legal piece needs to come into play, that the advocates, the organizers, the activists believe and trust that you're going in the right direction. But as lawyers, we need to be able to do the same thing. And if their communication message is something that we wouldn't necessarily say, we have to accept that.
You prepare witnesses, you prepare your opposition, cross-examination, you control the courtroom, you control the judge, you control the jury. When you deal and operate in the policy space, you're dealing with people who are hurt, people who are targeted, people who are oppressed. These folks have been controlled all their lives. And with the policy issues we're concerned about, they feel empowered when their voices are amplified. And so you want to amplify their voices, and once you do that, you got to listen. You've got to concede some control and some space and some judgment to them. And that's really hard to do. But I think time and time again, we see that the issue gets advanced, the cause gets advanced when you learn to share decision making.